pictured this chilling moment unfolding in real time. A seemingly ordinary middle-aged man living an unremarkable suburban existence as a devoted husband and father in upstate New York suddenly lifts the telephone receiver on an otherwise mundane afternoon in September 2023 and delivers 4 words that would reopen a 3-decade-old wound and send shockwaves through an entire investigative community. I am a serial killer who's only killed once, he calmly states to the detective on the other end of the line, his voice steady and devoid of any tremor, as though he were confessing to a long-forgotten parking violation, rather than the savage, blood-soaked murder of an innocent mother in her own home nearly 30 years earlier. This man, Stefan Smirk, had never been a suspect, had never appeared on any radar, had built an entire life of normalcy on top of the darkest secret imaginable, until the weight of that secret, perhaps combined with the terrifying advance of modern genetic genealogy techniques, finally compelled him to walk voluntarily into a police station and lay bare the horrifying truth of what he did on a rainy November night in 1994. The victim was Robin Warr Lawrence, a talented 37-year-old artist whose colorful abstract paintings once brought warmth and inspiration to strangers, now reduced in the public memory to a gruesome statistic, stabbed 49 times in a frenzied, seemingly motiveless attack while her 2-year-old daughter slept just rooms away. Back in 1994, many assumed the case was effectively solved in the court of public opinion. Fingers pointed firmly at the grieving husband, yet no arrest ever materialized, no conviction was secured, and the truth remained entombed in silence for almost 3 full decades, until this voluntary, bone-chilling confession tore the lid off everything. It was a deceptively peaceful Friday evening in mid-November 1994, the kind of crisp early winter twilight when the suburban streets of West Springfield, Virginia seemed wrapped in an almost tangible blanket of safety and routine normalcy, where neighbors waved casually from driveways and porch lights flickered on one by one against the encroaching darkness. Inside the modest yet warmly inviting split-level home on a tree-lined cul-de-sac, 37-year-old Robin Warr Lawrence moved through the familiar rhythms of motherhood and creativity with the quiet grace that had always defined her existence. Robin was an artist whose soul seemed to spill onto canvas in vivid explosions of swirling blues, fiery oranges, and tender lavenders, abstract works that captured emotion rather than literal form, pieces that had found appreciative homes in local galleries and private collections throughout Northern Virginia, each brushstroke a testament to her gentle, luminous spirit. She was also a devoted mother to her bright-eyed 2-year-old daughter, Emily, whose infectious giggles and tiny hands reaching for crayons had become the joyful center of Robin's world, transforming ordinary days into small miracles of love and discovery. Robin's husband, David, a dependable government contractor whose work frequently required short trips out of state, had departed earlier that day for yet another brief business journey, leaving mother and daughter to enjoy their familiar weekend routine in the comforting cocoon of their home. After preparing a simple dinner and bathing Emily in the soft glow of the bathroom light, Robin carried her sleepy child upstairs, tucked her into the small bed adorned with pastel blankets and stuffed animals, read a gentle bedtime story in her soothing voice, planted a final kiss on the little girl's forehead, and quietly switched off the lamp, leaving only the faint hallway nightlight to guard against shadows. Descending the stairs once more, Robin likely paused in the living room to savor a few moments of solitude, perhaps sipping chamomile tea from her favorite mug, or idly sketching preliminary ideas for her next painting on a notepad balanced on her knee, completely unaware that the ordinary tranquility of her evening was about to be irrevocably shattered by an intruder whose darkness had been silently gathering momentum for years. Outside, a steady November rain had begun to fall, tapping insistently against window panes and rooftops, muffling the sounds of the neighborhood and cloaking the streets in a silvery veil that made everything feel slightly distant and dreamlike. No one in the surrounding homes could have suspected that a young man harboring a long-nurtured, terrifying compulsion was already cruising those rain-slicked roads in search of an outlet for the pressure that had been building inside his mind like a storm ready to break. That particular evening, after consuming several beers and possibly additional substances that lowered his already fragile inhibitions, the compulsion reached an unbearable crescendo, propelling him into his vehicle and westward towards the quiet residential neighborhoods where ordinary families slept peacefully behind unlocked doors. He drove aimlessly at first, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, his eyes scanning darkened houses for any sign of vulnerability, any indication that fate might present him with the opportunity he both craved and dreaded. Eventually, his gaze settled on the small "For Sale" sign planted in Robin's home, a small detail that, in his distorted reasoning, suggested the residence might be temporarily unoccupied, or at least less carefully secured than others nearby. Parking several blocks away to avoid drawing attention, he emerged into the wet night air wearing a dark ski mask pulled low over his features and leather gloves covering his hands, items he had deliberately brought with him as though some part of his mind had already rehearsed the steps he was about to take. Moving silently through the shadows, he approached the rear of the house, tested the sliding glass door or an unsecured side entrance, and found to his simultaneous relief and excitement that it yielded without resistance, granting him entry into the warm, dimly lit interior where Robin still sat unawares, her world about to collide with his in the most devastating way imaginable. The moment Robin became aware of the intruder's presence, perhaps a faint creak of floorboards under unfamiliar weight, perhaps the soft metallic click of a latch giving way, Robin rose instinctively from her seat, heart pounding with the sudden surge of adrenaline that accompanies the realization that safety has been breached. She moved towards the source of the noise, likely intending to investigate or confront what she may have initially assumed was a startled animal or a neighbor in need, only to find herself face to face with a masked figure whose eyes burned with an intensity that instantly communicated mortal danger. In that frozen heartbeat of recognition, panic erupted. Robin's survival instincts kicked in as she attempted to retreat, to shield herself, to somehow protect the sleeping child upstairs from whatever horror had invaded their sanctuary. Smirk, driven by the same compulsion that had brought him there, lunged forward and seized a kitchen knife from the counter, one of Robin's own everyday utensils, now transformed into an instrument of unimaginable brutality. What followed was a frenzied, prolonged assault marked by extraordinary violence. 49 separate stab wounds delivered in a chaotic storm of motion, piercing Robin's chest, abdomen, neck, arms, and hands as she desperately fought to defend herself. Defensive wounds on her forearms and palms bore silent witness to her courageous struggle. She blocked, she pushed, she tried to wrest the blade away, even as blood began to pour from multiple wounds and her strength rapidly ebbed. Smirk later admitted in his confession that he employed techniques learned during military training to maintain control and inflict maximum damage, yet the attack quickly spiraled beyond any semblance of precision into pure animalistic overkill. Blood sprayed in arterial arcs across living room walls, soaked deep into carpet fibers, and created slick trails across hardwood floors as Robin staggered, crawled, and attempted to flee towards the hallway, or perhaps towards the stairs, in a final instinctive effort to reach her daughter.
Instinctive effort to reach her daughter. At some point during the onslaught, Smirk deliberately severed the telephone cord in the bedroom, ensuring that no emergency call could interrupt or summon help. The entire episode unfolded in a matter of minutes that must have felt like an eternity to Robin. Minutes filled with terror, pain, the desperate fight for life, and the heartbreaking awareness that she might never see her little girl again. When the last thrust finally came and Robin's body went still near the entrance to her bedroom, Smirk stood over her for a moment, chest heaving, hands slick with blood, the knife still clutched tightly as the reality of what he had done began to settle into the sudden, deafening silence. With mechanical detachment, he roughly wiped the blade on nearby fabric and discarded it, taking no valuables, leaving no additional message or sign of intent beyond the sheer destruction he had wrought. He exited through the same door he had entered, stepping back into the persistent November rain that immediately began to wash traces of blood from his gloves and clothing as he hurried through darkened backyards to his waiting car. Driving back to his barracks under the cover of night, he showered meticulously, scrubbing every inch of skin and disposing of any potentially incriminating garments, then climbed into bed and, astonishingly, fell asleep as though the preceding hours had been nothing more than a particularly vivid nightmare. Meanwhile, upstairs in her small bedroom, 2-year-old Emily stirred awake sometime in the early morning hours of Saturday, calling softly for Mommy in the darkness. Receiving no answer, she slipped out of bed, toddled down the hallway in her footed pajamas, and entered a house that had been transformed overnight into a place of incomprehensible horror. She wandered through rooms still reeking of blood and fear, perhaps playing quietly with familiar toys, nibbling on whatever small snacks she could reach on lower shelves, crying intermittently when loneliness and confusion became overwhelming. Uncomprehending of death or violence, Emily spent nearly 48 hours alone in that house, 2 full days and nights, periodically calling for her mother, sleeping fitfully on the floor near the body she could not rouse, her tiny world reduced to waiting for an answer that would never come. By Sunday morning, the accumulation of untouched newspapers on the driveway and the overflowing mailbox had finally aroused concern among watchful neighbors who knew Robin's routines and sensed that something was terribly amiss in the usually cheerful household. A welfare check was requested, and when officers forced entry into the residence, they stepped into a tableau of carnage that would haunt even the most seasoned investigators for years to come. Blood had dried in grotesque patterns across multiple rooms, arterial sprays on walls,
heavy pooling on floors, smeared footprints in child-sized patterns showing Emily's innocent wanderings through the aftermath. The little girl herself, still dressed in the same pajamas she had worn to bed Friday night, stood silently in the midst of the chaos, wide-eyed and mute as strangers in uniforms entered her shattered world. Robin's body was located in the bedroom area. The sheer number and ferocity of the stab wounds immediately indicated that this had not been a crime of passion tempered by remorse, but rather a sustained, frenzied assault driven by something far more disturbing. Detectives from the Fairfax County Police Department arrived swiftly and began the painstaking process of documenting the scene, collecting evidence, and attempting to reconstruct the sequence of events that had led to such devastation. In the investigative climate of 1994, long before widespread DNA databases, genetic genealogy, or advanced forensic video analysis, the focus naturally turned inward toward those closest to the victim, following the long-established pattern that most homicides are committed by someone known to the deceased. David Lawrence, still out of state on his business trip, was immediately contacted and provided a detailed account of his movements. Hotel receipts, credit card transactions, and corroborating statements from colleagues quickly established an ironclad alibi that removed him from suspicion in any practical sense. Nevertheless, public perception and media coverage were less forgiving. Whispers circulated about life insurance policies, recent marital disagreements, and the statistically higher likelihood of spousal involvement in such cases, creating an atmosphere in which David found himself under intense scrutiny, despite the absence of concrete evidence linking him to the crime. He cooperated fully with authorities, appeared publicly grief-stricken, and steadfastly maintained his innocence, yet the shadow of suspicion lingered in the community long after detectives had privately cleared him. Alternative theories were explored and pursued with equal diligence. Perhaps a botched burglary in which the intruder panicked on encountering an awake resident, though the complete absence of theft argued strongly against this explanation. Perhaps a random predator passing through the area, though no similar attacks had been reported in the vicinity. Perhaps even a casual acquaintance harboring unknown resentment, though exhaustive interviews with friends, co-workers, and neighbors yielded no credible leads in that direction. Physical evidence recovered from the scene was frustratingly limited by contemporary standards. Fingerprints were either smudged beyond usability or belonged to household members. Shoe prints proved too generic to trace, and no semen, hair, or other biological material suggested a sexual motive. Yet one seemingly minor discovery refused to be dismissed: a single small drop of blood on a washcloth left in the bathroom sink, a drop that laboratory analysis quickly determined did not belong to Robin and carried the male blood type O. Detectives carefully preserved and sealed that sample, recognizing even in 1994 that future advancements in forensic science might one day transform this tiny droplet into the key that unlocked the entire mystery. For the time being, however, the investigation stalled. The case gradually migrated to cold case status, and Robin's devastated family, parents Ollie and Nicole, sister Mary, and especially young Emily, were left to navigate a lifetime of grief without the closure that a conviction might have provided. As the years accumulated into decades, the Lawrence family learned to carry their loss in the quiet, private ways that only those who have buried a loved one to violence truly understand. Holidays forever marked by an empty chair at the table, birthdays shadowed by the realization that Robin would never see another candle lit, anniversaries of the murder passing in somber reflection rather than celebration. Emily grew from a traumatized toddler into a resilient young woman, her childhood memories fragmented and painful, yet tempered by the love and steadfast support of grandparents, aunts, uncles, and therapists who worked tirelessly to help her process the unprocessable. Ollie and Nicole, Robin's parents, aged under the double burden of sorrow and unanswered questions, their lives forever altered by the brutal theft of their daughter in what should have been the safest place she knew. Meanwhile, the broader world moved forward at an accelerating pace, with technological revolutions reshaping nearly every aspect of human existence, including, crucially, the field of criminal investigation. The emergence of DNA databases in the late 1990s and early 2000s offered the first real hope that old, seemingly hopeless cases might be reopened and solved. But it was the explosive rise of investigative genetic genealogy in the late 2010s and 2020s that truly transformed the landscape. By uploading crime scene DNA profiles to publicly accessible genealogy websites, skilled analysts could construct elaborate family trees, trace distant relatives, and eventually narrow the pool of potential suspects to a handful of individuals, a technique that had already brought long elusive predators like the Golden State Killer and countless others to justice after decades of impunity. In Fairfax County, a dedicated cold case unit, bolstered by new funding and
Law enforcement, bolstered by new funding and renewed determination, quietly reopened Robin Lawrence's file in the early 2020s, exhuming the long-preserved evidence and subjecting it to the most advanced forensic analysis available. The single drop of blood on the bathroom washcloth, that tiny, almost forgotten artifact from 1994, yielded sufficient genetic material for a full profile to be generated and uploaded to public databases. Patiently, methodically, investigators followed the digital breadcrumbs that led backward through generations of relatives until a promising lead emerged pointing northward toward the state of New York and a seemingly unremarkable software engineer named Stephen Smirk. Now 51 years old, married with 2 children, holding a stable professional position and possessing no prior criminal record whatsoever, not even a minor traffic violation, Smirk appeared to represent the very epitome of middle-class normalcy. Detectives from Fairfax County traveled discreetly to his residence in Niskayuna in September 2023 and requested a voluntary DNA sample, which he provided without hesitation or apparent concern. They departed believing the encounter had been routine and inconclusive until, astonishingly, less than 90 minutes later, Smirk himself placed a telephone call, first to local authorities and then directly to the Virginia investigators, uttering the words that would change everything. "I need to turn myself in for the 1994 murder of Robin Lawrence in Virginia."